You are advocator. You are also advocator of currency competition and free money markets. And what is your practical proposal? How to reach it?
You could just change the law in such a way that you that you eliminate all legal stipulations that we currently have that oblige the citizens to use the euro. So the euro then would become automatically just one money that could be used along with others as well, and everybody could just make up his own decision whether he wishes to sell and buy with euros or use other monies such as the dollar, the ruble, the Swiss franc, or gold coins or silver coins. So I don't know how the banking law is organized in Slovakia. In Germany, you would have to abolish the monopoly. Right? We have a monopoly right for the European Central Bank. In France, they have legal tender laws, so there is the obligation for citizens to accept euros in payments of financial obligations. Right? So it differs a little bit in each country, but that would be really all that would be needed. Is, on a technical level, a very simple reform. It's not difficult.
Nech sa páči, kto má záujem. Úplne v zadnom radu vidím Helgu. Nech sa páči. Počujete na mikrofón.
Thank you. I would like to ask my question in English, if I may. Professor, I noticed that you're teaching at French University, and I would like to ask you a question because France is very known through huge interventionist approach, where, as I say, even the right-wing government is left when it comes to some measures taken by the government. So my question is how your alternative theories, which is the Austrian school, are perceived by the academic community at French universities. Thank you.
Well, it's difficult for me to give a general answer to this. I know that marginally more people are becoming interested in this, but I think it's fair to say that most economists don't know even what this is, the Austrian school. Right? Most economists in France wouldn't know this. My colleagues in Angers, of course, they do know this, because I'm there. They're not yet convinced, so I still need to work on this. Right? But so they have seen that it's not completely absurd. Right? So even if you come from a completely different direction, right? So there are good reasons to be made against the current system. So there are problems with this and so on. So I brought them so far. Right? Give me a little bit more time, I might make further progress. But I mean, of course, most economists in France, right? France is a very peculiar country because indeed, it's probably the only country in the world in which the economists have more interventionist preferences than the rest of the population. Usually, the economists are more liberal than the rest of the population, which is a professional bias, right? Because once you study economics, you come to understand the limitations of what the government can do, so you become more skeptical. And all the good economists in France, they are actually much more liberal than the rest of the population. But you have even somebody who is fairly communist by Austrians, like Professor Piketty. Right? So, of course, he is more interventionist than the average Frenchman, but he is much more liberal than the average member of the Communist Party, because he is an economist. Right? So, yeah, there's this institutional bias. I mean, French economists have been selected by their ancestors, by their forebears and so on, right? You get some path dependency, right? It's difficult to get this out of the system. But yeah, Austrians are part of this. I'm part of this. I'm certainly not a representative of the French university system, but I'm a part of it. I'm happy to say that most of my colleagues feel very comfortable about this.
Nech sa páči, ďalší nás záujem. V treťom rade pán.
Otázku položím v slovenčine. Pán profesor, čím vysvetľujete, že momentálne počas niekoľkých posledných rokov je deflácia a menová politika sa nezmenila? Teda nedochádza k tým zmenám, o ktorých vy hovoríte. Pokračuje sa tá menová politika, ktorá sa začala uplatňovať po vojne, a predsa sme svedkami toho, že v posledných rokoch ceny stále klesajú. Napríklad v Európskej únii myslím si, že inflácia je 0 alebo 0,1%, že inflácia je blízko k nule. A to je najväčšia bolesť ekonómov, že inflácia je nulová a ekonomika nemôže rásť. Ale predsa tie menové, teda tá menová politika je stejná od druhej svetovej vojny, že tie ceny stúpali, ale teraz stagnujú alebo klesajú. To je moja otázka.
Yeah, we have indeed right now a situation in which the price inflation rate is not as high as the European Central Bank would like to have it. We had even in the past few years a situation in which in several areas of the Eurozone the price inflation rate was negative, so we had in fact deflation. Right? But this, of course, you have it in any currency zone, right? Even if you, let's say, before you have a country like Austria had the Corona, right? And if Austria had a national price inflation rate of 2%, that doesn't mean that prices were rising in unison 2% in all parts of the country. Right? In some parts they might have increased by 5%, in other parts of the countries the prices might have decreased. And so we have the same thing within Europe. We have always some areas. If you have an average of between 0 and 2, well, you have necessarily some parts of the economy where the prices shrink and others where they grow stronger than 2%. During the first years of the last decade, so from 2000 to 2008, roughly speaking, we had relatively high price inflation rates in Greece, in Portugal, in Spain, and in Ireland, also in Italy. And we had very often negative price inflation rates in Germany, in Austria, in the Netherlands, and maybe some other areas as well. Right? So in a way, we always had this. Right? What this European Central Bank is indeed concerned about, as you have said, is that we have now the average is too low, the average risk becoming negative. And that would pose a problem, I agree, well, it would pose a problem not for economic growth, right? It would pose a problem for the financial health of the biggest banks, right, that we have in the Eurozone. Because if you have negative price inflation rates, for the reasons that we've discussed, right, the financial asset values are likely to diminish. And that can be a problem for all those companies, all those banks that have a very thin layer of equity only. So this would then be eradicated very, very fast. And in which case the central bank would be confronted with a big problem, because the biggest part of the money supply is actually being produced by commercial banks. So then the central bank would have to step in and increase very massively the money supply, as it had done in, so the base money supply, right, as it had done in 2000. So I think, yeah, from a technical level, there's no disagreement about this, right? It's a very difficult situation. And if you enact a currency reform or monetary reform of the sort that I was discussing, the first thing that would happen is that you would get a major financial crisis. So I owe you this to be perfectly clear about this, right? It's a reform that does not come at zero cost, right? I told you, right? So this is the price to be paid, that you have to cut the excesses that have been building up in the past few decades. You have to cut them anyway at some point. So we are in for trouble sooner or later. My attitude toward these things is, if there's trouble ahead anyway, let's get through this right away. As long as we are still in relatively good shape, as long as we are still relatively wealthy in Europe, and as long as we do not have to fear that the population would starve. Because the policies that we are pursuing right now, they boil down to the consumption of capital. We are impoverishing us. Not very strongly, not a very strong, but we are sapping away at it. And we've been fortunate enough that we had very strong technological progress in the past 3 or 4 decades, lots of technological reforms that were magnificent. We had the collapse of the Soviet Union, so therefore the extension of the International Division of Labor. There were lots of positive things that were happening, and that overcompensated the negative influence that came from the monetary system and from the financial system. But this will not go on indefinitely. Right? So we shouldn't play with fire and hope that out of a miracle, new technological revolutions of the sort that we had in the past will benefit us again and again and again. It might happen. Again, I don't have the glass ball, I don't know it. But if it does not happen, we're in for big trouble. So the reasonable approach would be to say, well, we do the necessary reforms now, we do them as soon as possible, and we accept that we would go through a major financial and economic crisis, which would be an adjustment crisis, to get back to a more reasonable, sound foundation for the economy.
Nech sa páči, tu v druhom rade.
I will speak in English. Mr. Professor, we are living in a disaster financial time, and according to your recommendation, something should be done. I guess we are moving in a dead-end street, but on the other side, what do you think, what must be, what should happen to change meaning of financial elites and politicians to follow your recommendation?
Well, I think I cannot answer this question, so I have no recipe for this. I mean, there is, indeed, we have a fundamental problem here, namely that politicians lead people as a rule. They lead them where they want to be led. Okay. So a politician that says, well, okay, we're now doing this reform and we'll bring you all through a crisis, and actually you don't understand, because most people don't understand this. They don't understand the mechanism and so on. So anyway, I'm enacting this reform, trust me, but it will go, you will lose your job, and your house will be worth only half of what it would have been worth before, and so on, but it's necessary. Well, I mean, most people probably wouldn't re-elect him. Right? This is what Mr. Juncker said a few years back. I did a famous quote that was restated again and again. He said, well, we all know what we should do. We just don't know how to get re-elected once we've done it. Okay. Now, for me, but I'm certainly naive, I'm a professor, I'm not a politician. I don't earn my money with politics, which is the problem. For me, such a statement is cynical, because that's precisely the role of a leader, to bring the country toward the common good, a direction that it should take, even if it costs him his job. That's precisely why he is a political leader. That's precisely what we need them for. Right? You don't need a political elite to guide you through sunny weather and a nice day and just ride on the top of a wave with nice compensation packages and so on. What you need a leader for is to carry a community to a difficult time that might cost him himself his job. So that would be my reason. I find such statements cynical, but they show that we have currently a crop of political leaders that are completely unfit for the challenges that we face. Now, how do we get better people there? I don't know. Right? If there's no economic incentive, you would need to have some saying, probably. Right? Some people are really not interested, they just want to get things done, you go in the right direction and then step out. Right? But the challenge is to do it and to explain such policies, because people will not go through this without a revolution if they don't understand why it's necessary. Now, many of those things most people do understand. Right? They say, well, it cannot go on like this indefinitely. But you have to explain why you do what you do. Right? So that's the problem for political leadership, and the people right now don't do it.
Nech sa páči, pán v druhom rade.
Ja sa opýtam po slovensky. Z toho, čo ste povedali, aj bolo tu povedané, potom vyplýva, že finančný systém alebo jeho reforma sa môže urobiť až po reforme alebo transformácii politického systému. Súhlasíte s tým?
No, I think, yeah, I mean, again, I said this before, right? The likelihood that this would happen on the regular way is not very big. That's true, right? It might be that some sort of a revolution be necessary first. Can be. But, I mean, technically it's not impossible. Right? Technically it's still possible that you have people creating new parties or changing the program of existing parties in order to bring about the necessary reforms. Technically it's not. It's a problem of proper motivation and having the right persons there. Right? Within those that are the political establishment right now, there's probably not much hope, I agree. But that's, what can I say? Can I say what would have to happen and how this is going to happen is indeed very difficult. Right? Then you might have a bottom-up mechanism also, but this invariably involves some illegality. You might start using yourself dollars, Swiss francs, rubles to make exchanges, stockpile gold, silver, and so on. Maybe then start using them in exchanges, even though this is not what the law says. Right? And actually, right now we are still benefiting from some sort of a normality. We're not yet in an exceptional situation such as a hyperinflation or some crisis and so on. But such situations cannot be completely ruled out. If such situations happen, we have very strong inflations, contrary to what we have right now. But let's say we would have such very strong inflation, then people would start helping themselves, even if it's against the law. So in that case, then, at some point, it's true, the people under the impact of a collapse start taking their destiny in their own hands. And then you get a disorderly adjustment process, which is not, I don't want to discredit this, right? It's not always the worst adjustment. And it has the huge advantage that it's a quick adjustment process. It's quick and brutal. Sometimes that's the best that you can get.
Nech sa páči, pán v štvrtom rade.
Budem hovoriť slovensky. Musíme samozrejme, že sme v eurozóne, tak žijeme týmito problémami predovšetkým. Pri nedávnej kríze Európska centrálna banka a jej šéf Mario Draghi nechali masívnym spôsobom tlačiť peniaze. Tak obrovské sumy v nádeji, že niektoré štáty, ktoré zle hospodárili finančne, sa z toho dostanú. Aký máte, pán profesor, názor na takéto masové tlačenie peňazí? Pretože viem, že nemecký finančný kruhov boli dosť protesty proti tomuto. Ďakujem.
I can follow the reasoning that is behind the policy of the European Central Bank. We are living in a situation that we never had in the past. The financial sector is very fragile. The fragility is typically measured by two elements. One is the liquidity, the other one is equity. So how much equity capital is in the companies. Liquidity is not a big problem because we have a fiduciary money system, we have a fiat money system, we can create as much money as we wish, which is actually a problem, but it's not a technical problem right now. Right? But the low equity ratios are a big problem. So the whole financial sector is a powder keg. It's just waiting for a little light and it will explode. In such a situation, if you do not want to risk the collapse, you have to pay attention that you have sufficiently high price inflation rates. So I follow entirely the reason behind it. I think it's wrong, especially in the medium and the long run, but it is what keeps us going over the day. And that is the mission as the governing council of the European Central Bank understands its own mission. They're just looking at the short run and they leave everything that concerns the long run they leave this to the politicians, okay, which is a way of kicking on the can, right, always to other people doing the dirty job, not us. We're just doing technical things. Yeah, so why is this opposition in Germany? Well, I think because the Germans, at least the population as a whole, has not realized in which situation we currently are. That this is, I mean, it's sinking in slowly, but so the traditional German position was, well, if the banks have come close to bankruptcy, maybe you should shut down the bank. So you just close it, those that have acted irresponsibly and so on. If you do this in the present context, it's very difficult to do for political reasons, because invariably this involves some foreign bank. And if you do it through the market process, in which you just let a bank go bankrupt, this can very quickly turn into this little light that brings the whole thing to an explosion. So I think that the Germans had the right mentality. They had a way of looking at the fiat money system that we have with the eyes of people that were still living in a natural financial economy. Right? And in a way, it's a good and honorable thing, especially if you're ready to pay the price. Right? If you're ready to pay the price, if things collapse and so on, you have to adjust and so on. And certainly this readiness is there in large parts of the German economy. But I think also it's there in the Czech Republic, in Slovakia, in Austria and so on. There is a lot of willingness to accept short-run sacrifice for the greater good in the longer run. But there are countries where this is not the case. Right? And to keep the European Union together, you need to make everybody happy. So it's very difficult to move forward from here. And I don't have a solution for this. Maybe the solution is the one that the Brits are trotting down on and say, well, okay, we're stepping out. We see we cannot do certain things that are very important for us in the context of the European Union, so we step out, we try to get along with everybody as nicely as we can, but we're doing it separately. Maybe that's the only approach. I don't know. It is an approach.
A poslednú otázku, last question. Vidím prezadu, pani slečna, neviem.
Jednu otázku v slovenčine. Nie som ekonom, ale architekt, ale mám pocit, že som prežila isté obdobie reformy a slobody, ktorá tu nastala, a to bolo v čase, keď nastúpil Bitcoin, mena, ktorá bola úplne oslobodená od bankových poplatkov, bank, od vstupu vlád alebo politikov. A ja som prvýkrát zažila pocit, že chvíľu mi to síce trvalo, kým som pochopila, o čo tu ide, a zaviedla som si peňaženku bitcoinovú, ale pochopila som, že toto je asi tá reforma, o ktorej hovoríte, alebo si to myslím, že by to mohla byť. Samozrejme, že vstúpili do toho banky a vstúpili do toho politici a tú živelnosť a tú slobodu a ten entuziasmus tejto slobodnej meny nejakým spôsobom priškrtili, ale myslím si, že toto bola cesta. Ja som ten pocit vtedy mala, neviem, či je falošný, ale chcem vedieť váš názor.
My personal opinion is that Bitcoin is perfectly legitimate, and it's part of the free market, it's part of a free society. Nobody is forced to use Bitcoins, neither to take them as payment nor to make payments with Bitcoins. It's a completely voluntary thing. There are certainly abuses, right? So certain criminals pay with Bitcoins, so they escape from financial controls and so on. That's true, but other people do this as well. Not only with cash, right? Cash has been a lot in the news that banknotes might be used by very bad people to make payments under the table outside of the law. But you can do the same thing with scriptural money, right? So bank money and so on. The Chinese are very advanced in this respect. So I encourage all of you to look at, search this on YouTube. You will find video documentation on different ways you can abuse money, even if it's under full government control. Right? There are certain ways. Let's give you one example. Right? The biggest possible abuses are again on the derivative markets. Okay. In the derivative markets, we exchange future payments. So I make an exchange with my neighbor, and we say, well, next year you will sell me microphones in which I will pay for this and that price. Now, all in this exchange depends on how we fix this future price. Right? If we make this exchange now in the present and the price is too high, right, then we could say, oh, you overpaid it. But if I make the payment in the future, I can say, well, this was my expectation that this price be formed in the future. Who is going to tell me when I was wrong? Right? So that's such an easy way to channel money from one person to another in a gift form or whatever, which is perfectly legitimate, and so you will never run into any difficulties with any financial authority anywhere in the world. Right? And so this whole trouble of going after people who are using bitcoins and using cash is just really going after the little people who use little means, and let the other guys do financial abuses on a large scale with perfectly acceptable means, apparently. So I like bitcoins, right? I've not yet used bitcoins myself. I'm much a too conservative person, right? So I like to use gold and silver, stuff like this, tangible wealth. But I considered buying bitcoins, and will probably do so in the near future. Yeah, I like all things that are full of initiative, that do new things, that try out new things to improve human life. And exactly this kind of creativity we need to get through difficult times.
Thanks. Good conclusion. Ďakujem. Náš čas sa žiaľ naplnil. Ešte raz chcem poďakovať našim partnerom. Chcem vám poďakovať za účasť, že ste prišli, že ste diskutovali, a hlavne chcem poďakovať pánovi profesorovi za zaujímavú prednášku a vyčerpávajúce odpovede. Thank you very much.